Welcome to another edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy, and this is the season premiere of the NFL version of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy because NFL Week 1 is here. It has arrived. It is time to kick that fucking pigskin off, and let's get this 2024 NFL season underway. Looking forward to it. And joining us here on our very first NFL show for the season here to preview Week 1, former Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver Gehrig Dieter. My guest here on this edition of the show. Gehrig, thanks for joining us. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Excited to be here, Ian. It's going to be a great one.
It will be. Looking forward to this season. Before we do that, first-time guests, we do the little thumbnail on the career retrospect, if you will. 5 seasons college for you, SMU, Bowling Green, where you played 3 seasons there. Look, you're hanging out with some football royalty, too, in the past. I mean, we're talking Nick Saban, arguably greatest coach in college football history at Alabama for 1 year. You end up with the Kansas City Chiefs in the NFL with Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Andy Reid win the first, and you were there for the first of the Super Bowls that they won there. So tell us a little bit about the football journey of Gehrig Dieter.
Yeah, no, it was an awesome road. I would say it was definitely not a straight road. There's a lot of things that kind of transpired and kind of led from one transfer to the other, and then obviously got lucky being in one spot here in Kansas City for 5 years, rather than kind of bouncing around team to team, which happens to a lot of guys in my position. So thankfully, I was lucky enough to stick here in Kansas City for 5 years. But yeah, the college road, man, like you said, ending up playing for Saban the last year was quite the experience, going from arguably the best college coach, arguably one of the best NFL coaches is kind of the ideal scenario for any football player. So just an extremely lucky guy to be in these situations and learned a lot, obviously, and love football. So really excited to be here and get going.
And like I said, you got to be with Alabama for a year, Kansas City. How fun was it playing on the same team as a Patrick Mahomes, a Travis Kelce, being coached by Andy Reid? That's one question, and the other one is how much contact do you still keep with them these days?
Yeah, no, those guys were they were good buddies. They are still good buddies. Golf with them the last week or the week before. So stays texting them every single day, mainly about baseball. I'm a big, obviously, Yankees fan, as we talked about before. So I I probably give them a little bit too much feed on with my Yankees text, and they probably don't like it too much. But I'm a hard time, big time Yankee fan, and everybody knows it. So talk a lot about Yankees and stay in contact with them, but just being around them every single day for the 5 years, you see what they are on the field. Behind the scenes, they're as normal as it gets. That's kind of why I think they're so well liked and so well perceived, is that they are very normal guys outside of football. Obviously, Travis in the last year is kind of blown up stardom wise with Dayton T Swift, but still as normal as it gets. If I ever need him, I can text him and I'll text back. So great guys to be around, extremely hard workers, love football, love the camaraderie of the team. And I think that's kind of what separates them, is their willingness to get to know teammates and kind of get in situations that most star players don't necessarily want to be in.
And that's great because, look, you had to grind and work hard to get your spots and get your opportunities when you were with the Kansas City Chiefs. You weren't always a regular on the team. And to hear stuff like that from you just now, that, hey, you got Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce still, hey, I've talked to them, they'll get back to me. That's pretty cool. It tells you how much they care about their teammates and still want to see them do well and still care about keeping in touch with them after they're no longer part of the team.
Yeah, and that's like I said, that's something that's I don't think really normal in the world of football, is hanging out with your teammates outside of just being in the building with them. So I think that's something that Pat learned. I mean, that's kind of in his nature, being the son of a professional athlete. But I think in the first year, Alex Smith was really good about getting some of the guys together outside of the building just to kind of get to know them, and with that, everything else comes. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, as we always do, too, we got to find some kind of highlight that we can show from Gehrig Dieter's past. It's what we always do with our first-time guests. We go back to the highlight reel and we go to the vault and we see what we can find. And we found one of your catches here at Bowling Green here from a long time ago, several years ago.
Yeah.
Here it is on do you remember this one?
Oh, yeah. SportsCenter Top 10, baby.
Watch this. It's a good one. I already saw it. Look at that.
Yeah, with
stabbing
one
it out of the air
hand.
with that left hand, getting the
Yep.
foot down inbounds. That's special shit right there.
Yeah, yep. That
That
was
kind of a
that was
catch.
a fun
It was
night.
well covered, one hand with your left hand, and getting that 1 foot down and being able to reel that in for the touchdown, man. Friggin' incredible job there.
Yep. And then like the later in that game, did the same thing with the right hand.
That's a hell of a catch right there. That's do you look back on that and say there's no better catch I made than that one?
In a game, yeah, that's for sure the best one I've ever made. But I had some pretty sweet practice catches throughout my career, but obviously those don't hold as much weight.
Well, that's unfortunately the cameras aren't always around for those
Yep.
ones. But no, I believe it too. I don't think you're bullshitting now because I see a catch like that. I'm like, if he made some really damn good catches in practice too, I think we'll believe him because it sure
Yeah,
looks
no,
like you're
that's
capable of it. Yeah,
yeah, a lot more opportunity in practice.
no question. So you're residing in where right now?
I'm in Kansas City.
Still in Kansas City.
Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah.
what's the vibe? I mean, obviously NFL season opener tomorrow night, week 1, Ravens and Chiefs. How excited are the Chiefs fans in that area for another season, a chance for a historic three-peat?
Very excited. I think that's what to me that's what separates Chiefs fans is they are excited year round, and obviously with all the success that's happened over the last 8 years, they have every right to be excited. But I mean, even me just personally going out with my family every other day or however often we do go out, get noticed. Chiefs fans are always kind of they know everybody on the team, which is fun for me. Obviously, I stuck around long enough and had great friends that were superstars on the team, so I'm a little bit more well known than I think other people in the same situation that I was in. But just the pride that these guys have in their city and their team. Today, always the day before the game, or typically it's Friday, I should say. They do a Red Friday deal where everybody's obviously wearing red throughout the city, and I think it's every McDonald's or something is giving out Chiefs flags with the purchase. I don't know what it is with the purchase or something, but these guys are just so in tune to what's going on, so prideful in the whole Chiefs organization, and I think the Chiefs do a great job of integrating themselves within the community.
Yeah, that's definitely something I've seen actually from afar. I see even when they're showing the games, whether they're on Fox or CBS or
Mhm.
whatever network's carrying their game, they'll often show, oh, there's a little charity event going on with the
Yeah,
Chiefs and getting
yeah,
involved in the community. And you always want to give back to the fans, especially when the fans are as passionate as they are. Now, look, passionate is a big part of it is they're winning too.
yeah.
When it's rough waters, sometimes it's harder to get the fan camaraderie around the team, but there's been no shortage of winning in
Yeah,
Kansas City for the last several years.
that's for sure. I think you've kind of seen the perfect situation with that with Chiefs football and Royals baseball. I think the last few years Royals baseball hasn't been great, and with their recent success, although they're on a little losing streak right now, but with their recent success, I think you see the fans coming out and the same Chiefs fans that are so passionate. It's the same thing with the Royals. So winning, obviously, at the end of the day, is the biggest factor in pro sports and sports in general with fan connection and fan engagement. So as long as you win, the fans will be there.
What makes Garrick Dieter a great guest, and he'll probably be on at least a few times this season with us here on the Football Frenzy, is he's one of us. He
Yep.
throws down some coin. Talk about how that's been going. Obviously, do you pick your spots? Are you selective? And do you make decisions on what to bet on your own? Do you have?
Yep.
You obviously look. Now that you know me, I'll be able to give you some advice and opinions if you want. But how do you go about the betting process on a daily basis?
Yeah, so obviously, kind of right when I was getting out of the NFL was kind of the launch of all the online betting apps. So
Yeah.
obviously, you want to jump right in if you're a retired athlete, and there's like a year, what would you call it? Kind of a waiting period that you have to wait a full year from like your last contract expiration date before you can throw down a bet. So on DraftKings, I should say. I don't necessarily know how it worked on other apps, but it wouldn't let me log in all the way on DraftKings. I had to wait a year. So once that happened, obviously you enjoy it. It's something that doesn't feel real to start, and I think that's obviously a negative thing that could happen with a lot of people. But slowly learn who knows what, and obviously you can only do so much by yourself. So for me, thankfully, I have a good buddy that's loves sports betting that does daily lineups and everything. So I relied a lot on him, and especially with college basketball and college football. I mean, I feel like I know enough with NFL stuff, and most of the time it's kind of just guessing because it's professional sports and you never necessarily know what's going to happen. But yeah, I got a good buddy now. Still same thing. I let him handle all my betting. I don't have discipline, I should say. Back to the Yankee deal. It's more of a Yankee thing versus anything else. If the Yankees, I think the Yankees are going to win every day, and that's obviously gets me in trouble. So I'm like, all right, so let me have my buddy. Let me send him some money. He handles all my bets. We talk about the bets. But I trust him.
And he
With him.
he places them for you, and he just he puts them in for
Yeah,
you on
yeah,
your
yeah.
behalf.
He
I
kind of
got it. Yeah, yeah.
just stacks my money on his, and just adds to those. So that's the best way that we've gone about it so far, and it's been going well. The daily lineups has been something that I've gotten intrigued in the last week or so with him too. He does a really good job with that. But obviously, with the help of you and a lot of resources coming our way, I think it's going to be a great season. I'm excited for it.
I've put in a fuck ton of work, man,
Yep.
to get ready for this NFL season and college football for that matter. So I'm ready to see it pay off throughout the course of the season. There's no question. And I'm looking forward to seeing if my reads for these teams in week one come to fruition the way I think. So here we go. It's time for our guest here to get his NFL betting analyst hat on here, and we'll see what he's made of here. And we'll begin with the season opener. Of course, it's always the defending Super Bowl champions opening up at home on Thursday night to begin the season. We've got Baltimore and Kansas City. What a game to start the season. AFC Championship rematch. Kansas City right now, 3-point home favorites at Arrowhead, or Geha Field at Arrowhead, as they call it now. 47 the total here in this game. Look, Kansas City took down Baltimore in the AFC Championship game last year, wins the Super Bowl, their second straight last year. I think when you look at this matchup for the Baltimore Ravens, there are plenty of concerns I have for Baltimore coming in to this season, and in particular to this game. The offensive line is the biggest. It's probably not even close for Baltimore. 3 offensive line starters are gone from last year. That's going to be something that they're going to have to manage. Will they be able to is the question. Now, they do have, obviously the addition of Derrick Henry at running back, a mobile quarterback, and Lamar Jackson that can help, mitigate some of those offensive line concerns. But I think when you look at Baltimore, an offensive line that last year, and plus one of their best offensive linemen too. You talk about how he's been kind of the stalwart for them, Ronnie Stanley. He's not only older, but he's had seems like injuries every single season. Is he going to be still that elite level of left tackle that you need? They've other than Stanley and Linderbaum. That's a Seinfeld reference. Yeah, Tyler Linderbaum at center. I mean, it's brand new pretty much on that offensive line. I think receivers depth is a concern. Is Rashad Bateman legit number 1 receiver? I like Zay Flowers, great speed in the open field. I think he's shown you what he can do, but I'd like to see Bateman take another step. We'll see what Deontay Hardy can do, but there's kind of a concern here with what they're going to get. Tylan Wallace, Nelson Aguilar has been around the block, so what will you see from this Ravens receiving core, which to me doesn't have as much depth as you'd like to see? Phenomenal at tight end, I will say that. You love the Andrews Isaiah Likely combination, and of course Likely did a outstanding job when Andrews was hurt last year. But that O-line is a definite concern of mine for Baltimore. The defense was the strength last year. You look at it, against the run, good. Against the pass, they were very good last year. And I think when you look at the defense this year, it probably will be solid again, but you lose an outstanding defensive coordinator this year, Mike Macdonald, who was a big part of the reason that defense was good, the architect of that defense. Not saying that, you look at it, the new DC can't do a good job, but my goodness, Macdonald was an outstanding defensive coordinator, got this to be an elite level. Will that defense maybe take a step back? I do worry about that for Baltimore a little bit. I think for the Kansas City Chiefs, look, what's amazing about Mahomes, right? They win the Super Bowl. They had a meandering regular season. He was actually the worst. It was the worst season of his career, Patrick Mahomes, statistically in the regular season. And they still end up winning the Super Bowl. Just amazing how he was able to overcome that. I think when you look at it and overcome a receiving core that was dropping balls left and right, dropping passes left and right early in the season. The good news is they bolstered that receiving core. Now, One of the guys they got was Hollywood Brown. He's out. He's already ruled out, not going to play here in this opener. They have Rashee Rice, who showed you what he can do last year, had a good year. Xavier Worthy was a great draft pick out of Texas. I think he's a speedster. He's going to work perfectly. They think they see a little maybe not Tyreek Hill type of speed, but still the kind of speed that can take the top off the defense and make this vertical passing game even more dangerous. So Xavier Worthy's someone to watch. Justin Watson as well. So it's going to be interesting to see with this receiving core, but I think it's upgraded. Travis Kelce, of course, at tight end, someone to still obviously fear for opposing defenses. The offensive line, I think, pretty solid when I look at that group as well. Defense is interesting because I think the loss of L'Jarius Sneed is definitely a concern. It was phenomenal at the cornerback spots. You do have a little bit of a shakeup there in the secondary, but I like the defensive line. Linebacking core solid. You've still got Karlaftis and Chris Jones, of course, leading a ferocious pass rush along the D front. I think when you look at this matchup, too, there's just, for me, a few too many concerns with Baltimore coming into the year. And I do like Kansas City a little bit in this game. I wouldn't lay more than 3, but I do like the Chiefs a little bit here in this season opener. Kansas City is a team that I cashed a ticket with in the Super Bowl last year against San Francisco. It was a little peculiar that the line was where it was in that game. But I think when you look at this particular matchup, it's a short enough number. I know, like last year, we saw Kansas City, right, Gary? We saw them lose their season opener against the Detroit Lions. And so there could be that thought there that, you know what, this game maybe matters more to Baltimore because they're the team that's trying to prove something, right? Make a statement. Beat the team that knocked them out. Show that they can maybe be the supremacy team in the AFC this year.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same point in time, you could also counter that with saying, well, the Chiefs lost their season opener last year. Do they really want to lose it 2 years in a row at home? Probably not. So I'm going to go with Kansas City. It's not best bet material because I think Baltimore's had this game probably circled all off season, but I can't overcome, Gary, the O-line concerns. I can't overcome the loss of McDonald as the defensive coordinator. And I think those couple issues I've got for Baltimore make me think that not going to be easy for them to go into Arrowhead Thursday night and win. What do you think here, Ravens Chiefs?
I love the Chiefs. Obviously, a little biased, but I think you look at the offseason on everything that transpired with the Chiefs and their roster. Was their weaknesses last year? Left tackle was the weakness. Obviously, they addressed that in the draft. They feel really, really comfortable, really confident in the rookie they just got out of BYU. Obviously, the receiving core, like you mentioned, early in the season, especially, I think there was a lot of games that you could point to where you could blame them on the loss. First game was probably the biggest circle on that when you want to point to receivers and drops. Kadarius Toney had a lot of drops that led to, I think one led to a pick six, and a lot of people don't remember Travis Kelce did not play the first game, so that's obviously something that will be different this year. But I think the offseason that the Chiefs had with the additions, like I just mentioned, the receiving core is pretty damn good now with Worthy obviously being a guy. I don't think he's necessarily a Tyreek Hill type guy. To me, he's more of a Deshaun Jackson prototype. I think he's got that longer speed, smoother receiver type guy. So I'm excited to see how he can handle being in the NFL. He's a smaller bodied guy. He's probably 160 pounds. So see how he can handle hits, see how he can handle press and when bullets are live and everything's going on. That will be fun to watch. Obviously, they just brought Juju back off of with the Patriots releasing him, signing him back as a free agent. He's going to be that reliable guy underneath with Kelce. And then you got Rashee Rice, who had some offseason deals that did not hasn't got suspended. So he's playing week 1. And with Hollywood being out, you're going to expect a lot from Rashee Rice. And I think towards the end of the season, you saw that the Chiefs really relied on him to be that number 1 guy. So I think to me, I look at the Chiefs. I don't see a lot of weakness on that team. Any position you can point to, there's 1 or 2 guys that are pretty damn good. I think their O-line's probably the best in football. Their D-line, obviously, is signing Chris back, having some guys that have been there. George Karlaftis is a beast. So expect some big things from them. Secondary, I know you mentioned L'Jarius. I think that is their biggest weakness right now is that corner position. Seems like Coach Spags always knows how to just play his personnel when it comes to the secondary. So we'll see pretty quick. Obviously, the Ravens aren't the biggest test when it comes to throwing the ball, but just their dynamic on offense is going to be a challenge for Spags. It always is when you have a quarterback that's as electric as Lamar Jackson. So I would say I feel super strong about the Chiefs -3. I think over under 47.5 is a little bit more interesting. I think I would lean on going over. I think the Chiefs are going to put about 30 points on the board. I feel pretty confident with that. I think they're going to be rolling. Like I said, when you have guys that have been in the offense for more than 2 years together, a lot of things click, and a lot of those guys have been there for 4 or 5 years now. So that offense was obviously very tough to defend at the end of the season. That's what led to the Super Bowl. And then this season, I just think they added weapons that are going to make them even more dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, offensive line and receiver are concerning to me for Baltimore. So
Yes.
I personally would prefer probably Chiefs team total over than the full game because I don't know how much Baltimore is going to move it. And plus, I said this in the Super Bowl preview show and in the playoffs last year after the AFC Championship game. Todd Monken's got some making up to do as the offensive coordinator here for Baltimore. That was a
Yeah.
horseshit,
Yeah.
ridiculous donkey game plan
Yeah.
in the
Not running the
AFC
ball.
Championship game. Not
Yeah.
running the ball. It was the strength of the O-line is run blocking. The
Yep.
strength of your quarterback is running the football, using his legs when the pocket collapses, and then throwing on the run's actually a pretty good attribute of his. They tried to turn him into Joe Montana, make him a pure pocket passer in that game, and that's when the offense just stopped working after they had a really good start early in that AFC Championship game. I couldn't believe the game plan. It made absolutely zero sense, and that is going to be something to watch for. Can they finally get back to run heavy here? Now, the problem is the O-line's a lot worse coming into this year than it was. 3 starters gone. But the good news is Lamar's mobile. So if the O-line is not great in protection and run blocking, he can make things happen. And the good news is your running back now is Derrick Henry, who even if there's not a lot of room, you know what that guy can do, Garrick. He can push forward and he can grind out 4, 5, 6 yards when maybe it looked like there was only room to get 1 or 2 yards. He's that kind of back because he's so physical.
Yeah, he's one of the few guys in the NFL that you can just kind of give the ball over and over, and eventually he's gonna break one. So he's that guy that is circled for sure during Chiefs practice. All eyes on him. Stop that guy, make them throw the ball, which they obviously did in the championship last year. I don't think they necessarily stopped the run. They just Baltimore stopped running the ball, like you said, and you can't do that when you're one dimensional in NFL. It's very easy to defend. So being able to be balanced on offense, and you probably need to be a little bit more run heavy against the Chiefs anyway with Chris Jones and Karlaftis and their edge rushers that they have. It's a tough matchup, like you said. Not having their O-line intact, that's going to be the biggest concern. I think games like this, primetime games, leadoff games, they're all going to be one up front. So,
no question. Now, that's a good game, and so is this next one. Friday night, a rare Friday night showcase in the NFL. Green Bay Packers, Philadelphia Eagles. Looking forward to watching it. Well, those of you that have Peacock, you got to have that, unfortunately. But Sao Paulo, Brazil, Corinthians Arena. Philadelphia 2.5-point favorites, 49 the total for this game. Looks like the weather's going to be all right in Brazil, and that's actually not going to be that warm. You would think Brazil in early September, it's got to be hot as fuck.
yeah.
Right? It's actually only going to be in the 60s as far as Fahrenheit at game time. So pretty comfortable conditions, believe it or not, in Brazil Friday night for this Packers-Eagles game. Philadelphia, look, the bottom fell out last year. It was just a collapse. Second half of the year, they were one and done in the playoffs. And you could see they were one and done in the playoffs the way they finished that season. You could tell that they weren't going to get past Tampa. Like the season had just completely fallen off and everything fell apart. They did have some injuries, but at the same time, both sides of the ball came unglued. They couldn't get a stop anymore on defense. Jalen Hurts and the offense didn't put up the numbers they did early in the year. Coordinators, I don't think were that great on either side last year. It didn't go well with Johnson, the OC. They let him go. And then, of course, you ended up having Matt Patricia involved, and anything involving Matt Patricia is usually not going to go well. So that ended up being not a great way about it for Philly. So they get both coordinators replaced. You bring in Vic Fangio on defense. You bring in Kellen Moore on offense. And right away, I think you've got better coordinators. I think there's going to be improvement really both sides of the ball. I mean, certainly from the Eagles, they still have it, even with, like, I am a little concerned about Jason Kelce retiring. That's a Pro Bowl center. They do like Cam Jurgens, though. Jurgens hand lotion, as I like to say. He's going to be, I think, someone to watch for here because they like him. They think he can take over and be a pretty good center moving forward for the Eagles, and they do have depth there. So may not be as big as it would be for other teams losing to Jason Kelce. It still hurts, but because he was such a consistent and such a good center all his whole career. But they do like Cam Jurgens. Obviously, Saquon Barkley, gives them that legit weapon out of the backfield, which the Eagles have kind of missed in years past. And now Kenneth Gainwell's more of a second running back option, and he can be a pretty good one. And it goes without saying now what they've got at receiver. You already had A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, probably as good a 1-2 punch in the NFL as there is. And then you bring in Jahan Dotson right before the start of the season from the Washington Commanders, which I thought he played really well with Washington for a team that didn't have always consistent quarterback play. I mean, that guy's playing with fucking Sam Howell most of the year last year. So definitely Jahan Dotson. Now that he's with Jalen Hurts and this great O-line, this great offense overall, and of course Dallas Goedert, the tight end. I mean, tons of weapons. There's no doubt. And the offensive line to me still very good. What's interesting, too, about this Eagles offense is they go up against Jair Alexander, who has had a lot of injuries. We've thought of him as one of the elite corners in the NFL, but it was not one of his better years last year. So that is something to watch for. What's left in the tank? Because he's still on paper, I think, supposed to be their best corner. But you look at last year, his PFF corner coverage grade was only 75. He's been an 80 grade type of player most of his career. So it fell a little bit. Remember, injuries probably have debilitated Jair a little bit. So hopefully he can bounce back, because the rest of that secondary, there's questions with Stokes and with Nixon and some of those other players in the secondary. So there could be an element here to this game where if Jalen Hurts and that receiving core is on their game, they could maybe pick on the secondary here a little bit for the Green Bay Packers. On the flip side, you look at the other side of the football. Defense for Philly struggled mightily down the stretch last year, but you would expect with Vic Fangio taking over as defensive coordinator, you're going to see improvement. Will you see it right away is going to end up being the question for the Philadelphia defense going into this game. But, the secondary did have to improve. And it'll be interesting to see with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson signed, which is big. That's definitely important for the Philadelphia Eagles and shoring up that defense. I think on the line and as far as pass rush and against the run, they're still extremely stout there, stopping the run, getting a pass rush as well with who they have on that defensive side of the football as well. I mean, when you look at it, this roster, there's no reason to think, defensively. The secondary was the one issue that they had to address because they were only 28th in the NFL as far as pass defense last year, no question. Reed Blankenship was good, but the fact that C.J. Gardner-Johnson in the fold, they think Mitchell and Cooper DeJean are going to be solid for them. And, of course, Mitchell is going to be someone to watch for because obviously his, this cornerback is someone that they think could really take a big step this year, something to maybe hang your hat on here if you're Philadelphia. But as far as Brandon Graham and Josh Sweat, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, that is a very, very stout defensive front that Philadelphia has this year. So I like the Eagles less than a field goal here. Green Bay was a tale of two seasons last year. In fact, both of these teams were. Philadelphia had the great first half, horseshit second half, and it was the vice versa for Green Bay. They had the horseshit first half, and they had the great finish and into the playoffs there. So both of these teams could not put together one full season of great, consistent football. But I think Philadelphia is in a little better spot here just because I trust their defense a little bit more than Green Bay to begin the year. I love the Packers offense. There's no question when you talk about Jordan Love and you talk about the emergence of a lot of their receivers last year who came on strong down the stretch. Christian Watson, we knew. Romeo Doubs, we knew. But what about Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks, the way those guys played late in the season? You bring in Josh Jacobs at running back to replace the departed former back. That helps, of course, to soften the blow for the Green Bay Packers. So I look at this game here as less than a field goal. Still think as far as an all well-rounded team, a little bit better on defense, that could make the difference. Eagles less than a field goal. I actually like points in this game. Prefer the two primetime games, Thursday, Friday. I think this one could end up being the higher scoring affair. And Philly wants to run some tempo, apparently. Yeah. We'll see. Because Nick Sirianni, Kellen Moore have said, and we've seen it in the preseason at times, they got into the huddle, snapped the next play. They kind of think their offense is good enough they can get back to playing a little faster because they slowed it right down last year. 2 years ago when they first got there and Steichen was the OC, they were playing fast. They would snap the ball with far less than zero on the play clock. Or far more, I should say, than zero on the play clock. Last year, they slowed it down. I think part of it is because the offense just didn't perform as well. They didn't. Maybe the coordinator again had some issues. I was not a big fan of Brian Johnson, the coordinator, but I think when you look at it this year, they're going to get back to playing a little more tempo, Philadelphia. So as far as the total at 49, I do like over the total here in Brazil on Friday night. Garrick, what do you think here? Packers Eagles.
Yeah, I love the over. I love over 49. I think that hits pretty easy. Like you said, I think both teams have a lot of questions on the defense. I think that was their biggest issues last year. So going into the game, I mean, my biggest thing, I think Jordan Love having this is his second full year starting. So I think you're going to see him take that next step into being the top. I mean, there's a lot of people that think he's a top 3, top 4 quarterback in terms of talent. So to see him, this is kind of that year, that prove it year in terms of that. And I think with the receivers, I think receivers last year with the Packers was a question mark. And I think they have solidified some guys, especially late in the season, like you just mentioned, some guys stepped up. I'm excited to see those guys take that next step against a secondary that has some new guys, but it's a new system. There's always questions marks when in any, I mean, offense or defense, when you're playing football and it's a first year of an offense or defense, there's a lot of unknowns. And I think that's a lot of people don't really realize how much goes into knowing an offense or a defense. And when you change that whole thing, when you get a new coordinator in there, it changes a lot. And I think getting comfortable in a certain scheme is tough. So I kind of lean Packers first game. I think that they're going to have the edge in terms of offense. I think losing Jason Kelsey hurts a lot more than a lot of people will realize. I think obviously when it comes to that short yardage stuff, that you could just bank on the Eagles 90% of QB sneaks were first downs. I don't think that's the case this year. I don't think you have I mean, Jason Kelsey's one of the all-time great centers in the NFL. So not having him in that spot, leadership-wise as well on the offense, obviously Jalen's a great leader in himself, but in terms of just that grittiness, I think they're going to be missing that this year. So I'm leaning Packers in this matchup.
All right, liking the Packers. So we disagree on the side, but we both like points there on Friday night in Brazil. All right, let's turn to Sunday now. Jacksonville and Miami. We've got the Dolphins 3.5-point home favorites, 49 being the total here in this game. When you look at the Jacksonville Jaguars, it was obviously a disappointing season last year for them, failing to make the playoffs. A lot of people expected that to be a playoff team. Just was not the case here for the Jacksonville Jaguars this year. Trevor Lawrence, someone that got paid in the offseason, so there's big expectations for him to have a lead an offense back to prominence here. We look at Travis Etienne as a starting running back. Nothing wrong there. They bring in Gabe Davis from Buffalo to pair him with the likes of Christian Kirk, who actually had great chemistry, I thought, last year with Trevor Lawrence. Brian Thomas, Parker Washington, Devin Duvernay, rounding out the wide receiver core. Evan Engram, starting tight end. I think middle of the pack as far as receiver depth. It's solid, but there's better and more depth, more quality depth out there than what Jacksonville has. But I think it's good enough to get them by. I think when you look too at Jacksonville, one of the critical issues for them coming into this season is their pass rush. It's going to be something to really watch out for here. They did sign Eric Armstead, Trayvon Walker, who was the first overall pick for Jacksonville a couple of years ago, just hasn't really hit and fired the way they thought he would from that position. So who's going to step up and give them that consistent pass rush on defense? That's a very, very big concern for me, especially when you're talking about playing this electrifying hyper speed, if you will, and certainly potentially explosive Miami offense. And you get Miami at home. And we did note all year last year on this show, Garrick, how this Miami team was such a different team on the road. They were so good at home. And then on the road, they just, especially against better competition, they just wouldn't hold up in those type of games. So I think when you look at this spot here, it's a tough one, I think, for the Jacksonville defense. Tough first matchup. When you look at Miami on offense, now the O-line is concerning a little bit because you look at last year, they had a lot of injuries on the offensive line. The Dolphins last season. They're going to have a much greater degree, I guess you could say, of health this year along the offensive line. Robert Hunt went to Carolina. Connor Williams with an ACL injury. But the good news is they believe Teron Armstead's going to be ready to go. And he's the biggest part of that O-line because when he was on the field last year, it was a good O-line. You could say above average at least. When he was not on the field, the O-line was just nothing close to as good. So Teron Armstead's a big factor here for Miami. And if they get the pass protection, remember, Jacksonville's got concerns with their pass rush. Miami could be able to make plays because we know from a skill position talent perspective, Miami has got it. There's no question. They're loaded in the backfield with Mostert and Devon Achane. That's as good a duo as you could ask for. And Achane's got incredible speed. In fact, if you're talking fantasy football, I'm more bullish on Achane this year than Mostert, quite honestly. I think Achane, Garrick's going to be more of that guy that gets worked into this offense from the running back spot. And then it goes without saying what they've got at receiver, right? Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Odell Beckham Jr., River Craycraft, Braxton Berrios even is very good, previously with the Jets, of course. They're fine at receiver. They've got tons of weapons. They've got two of the fastest guys in the league in Hill and Waddle leading it, Jonnu Smith and Durham Smythe at tight end. Skill positions ain't an issue for Miami. Can that O-line block? Can that O-line protect? I think with Armstead on the field, they're going to have a better chance to do that, especially with the concerns I have for the Jacksonville pass rush. But on the flip side for Jacksonville, I think offensively, they're capable of moving the football here against Miami. And when you look at Miami, their pass rush has got issues with Phillips, that was banged up throughout training camp. Bradley Chubb's injured, not expected to play. They better hope this Chop Robinson that they got from Penn State, who they drafted to give them some more pass rushes, ready to play at a high level right away, because they have cluster injuries with their defensive front, especially as far as their edge rush situation. So that does concern me when you're talking about a quarterback like Trevor Lawrence, who, when he gets time, can throw the ball. And if you're not going to get there, he can also make plays with his feet as well. So this is another one where I think offenses have the advantage. I like these week 1 early September games, Garrig, in Miami, because the defenses wear down in that fucking 95-degree heat. And we see it all the time. Defenses, tackling becomes poor in the open field the longer the game goes when you're playing in that kind of a heat this early in the season. So for me, rather than either side, I don't have a strong take on the side. I'm going to the over here in this game, 49 with Jags and Dolphins. What do you think of this one?
I love the points. I'm a big component. I mean, week 1, Dolphins, healthy receiving core, healthy running back. It's hard to not take the points. I mean, you look at what they were doing. Historic. I mean, they were a historic offense when all those guys were on the field last year. So I think when you factor in health early in the season, guys are going to have fresh legs. Guys are going to be fast, flying around. It's tough to think of a better kind of wide receiver duo than Tyreek and Jalen Waddle. I mean, those guys are two very similar players that can do a lot of things, can break the game open, catching the ball 1 yard and taking it 100 yards to the house. So those are two of the most exciting football players in the game. I love the points in this one. I think Jacksonville last year, red zone offense was a concern. I think you can look back. They can move the ball against anybody. How can they score in the red zone? It was not a good stat on their end. I remember watching a few games that just they move the ball like anybody else, and they get down there and they just can't score. Whatever that reason may be, if it's play calling, if it's quarterback play. They just were not great in the red zone. So I think Dolphins going to take advantage of, like you said, that heat, wearing the all-white jerseys at home, stick Jacksonville in their black jerseys, and kind of just go from there.
All right, should be an interesting game there to see how that one plays out. All right, here's one that's really, really intriguing. Pittsburgh and Atlanta. Atlanta 3-point home favorites, 42 the total. Obviously, Pittsburgh, the focus in training camp's been the quarterback battle. Who will be the starting quarterback? It took a while, but eventually Mike Tomlin settled on Russell Wilson. Although how much of a leash does Russell Wilson have is the big question. And if he struggles, how long does it take to go to Justin Fields and give him a chance for the Pittsburgh Steelers? Look, for the Pittsburgh Steelers, we know offensively challenged is what they have been. There's a reason why they decided to pull the cord on Kenny Pickett last year. And try to see if they could make things better along the offense, especially at the quarterback spot. But the O-line is still a concern. Last year, struggling to protect for Kenny Pickett all year. Run blocking at times was not consistent enough. There's only one really good graded lineman that they had last year along the offensive line, Pittsburgh Sumalo. And other than that, there was a lot of concerns they had with the rest of the performance of the rest of this group. So that is definitely an area to watch for, this O-line. Now, they did focus on the O-line in the draft. 3 offensive linemen taken in the first 4 rounds, which should help. But you're still talking about an O-line that the projected starters are going to be Broderick Jones, Spencer Anderson, Zach Frazier, James Daniel, Troy Fautanu. Not a lot of high grades along that O-line, so that's something to watch for. George Pickens, glimpses and flashes of potential brilliance, and maybe working with maybe an upgrade at quarterback, whether it's Wilson or Fields, can help. I say upgrade because even with Wilson's concerns and even with Fields' inconsistency throwing the ball in Chicago, it still might be an upgrade from Pickett because Pickett was just too much more bad than good with him last year. But they have George Pickens, you have Van Jefferson. I mean, you got some weapons. Calvin Austin to work with. Pat Freiermuth is a good tight end. So there's weapons here, but that O-line is going to have to play well. And when you look at Atlanta, after last season, I didn't like their defense, but boy, they've made some improvements. You look at what they've been able to do, and there's a lot of the arrow's pointing up, I think, on this defense. The trade for Matthew Judon from the New England Patriots to really bolster the pass rush, significant addition to this defense here for the Atlanta Falcons. Hopefully a healthy Grady Jarrett this year will help as well. You end up bringing in Justin Simmons. That is a huge, huge addition as well to the secondary, which was picked on a little bit. I like A.J. Terrell, but a lot of holes in the rest of that secondary. Justin Simmons now is going to help that unit. Definitely an upgraded defense. And plus you bring in a head coach that's known for that side of the football, and Raheem Morris. Now, I don't love the Raheem Morris hire just because as a head coach, he hasn't been that great. But certainly defense is his calling card, and you'd think they're going to improve a little bit. Pittsburgh with the offensive line issues. I don't trust Russell Wilson on the road here. This is a tough game for me. And then on the flip side, you've got Kirk Cousins, who's coming off, an Achilles injury. How's he going to fare? He didn't see the field at all, in the month of August. And sometimes we saw it last year, the last 2 years even, Garrick, where there's been quarterbacks that don't see the field in training camp and preseason, and they don't look sharp. They don't look crisp. They're not in rhythm in week one of the regular season. So what we get from this Atlanta offense, even though Cousins just by default, even coming off an injury, even with the age he's at, he's an upgrade from any of the stiffs they had last year. Simple as that. I've seen enough. I've seen enough. If I don't see Desmond Ridder play quarterback again, I'll be happy. I can die a happy man because that man cost me so much at times last year, thinking he's better than he actually was for Atlanta. So you get him the hell out of there. And just by default, Cousins is better than that. Michael Penix, of course, more for the future, but he'll be backing up. Bijan Robinson, I think, could be one of the better running backs in the NFL. I loved what we saw to him, the Texas product last year. Drake London, I think, is a great receiver. Darnell Mooney, can he step up, be more consistent productivity-wise than he was in Chicago? I don't like that Kyle Pitts is hurt already. It looks like he's questionable for week one, but I think there's definitely reasons to think he'll be better as a tight end because, look, he's got a better quarterback now throwing the football to him. So this is an interesting game. I would lean Atlanta. What's keeping me off Atlanta? I still want to see these pieces fit before I believe it. And another thing keeping me off Atlanta, Gary, even though I'm leaning Falcons, Mike Tomlin long-term track record as an underdog is pretty good. I mean, this has always been the point spread role for Pittsburgh under Mike Tomlin. In fact, the numbers back it up as well for Pittsburgh. What is it? 58-34 against the spread for Mike Tomlin as an underdog in his career. So that's pretty good. It's enough to keep me off Atlanta. It's a lean to the Falcons. And I think this total, look, I think it's actually going to be a little bit lower scoring. There's too many offensive line concerns for Pittsburgh. I think the Atlanta defense is better. And are we going to expect Kirk Cousins and the Falcons offense, Kirk Cousins that didn't play in the preseason, to be in rhythm right away in week one? I'm not so sure. And Pittsburgh's strength is their defense with TJ Watt getting after the quarterback. I think the secondary is solid as well for the Steelers. I view them as a team where they're better on the defensive side of the football coming into the season than the offensive side. I mean, this could be a top 10 defense if things shake out well because you have Highsmith and Watt up front. Cameron Hayward's back in the fold now. You just got his deal done. Joey Porter Jr., Dante Jackson, a great safety as well, and Minka Fitzpatrick. I mean, it's a really good defense, Pittsburgh. And I don't think Atlanta's going to go up and down the field scoring points on them. So I actually think this game could stay under the total. What do you think here, Garrick? Steelers, Falcons?
Yeah, loving the under. Obviously, with Russell going to the Steelers this year, we're going to finally see if he's washed up or if he's can kind of turn the clock back a little bit and get back to those Seattle days. Obviously, his time in Denver did not go as I think a lot of people saw it going. I think there's a lot of question marks with him, his personality, how he fits among a team. I think he's been at least from what I've seen a little bit more low key in the offseason this year. So maybe that's going to benefit him as a guy in that locker room. I think in that time he spent with Denver, it was a lot about who am I? I'm the guy around here type type off season, and I haven't seen that this year. So I think that's something that's probably going to play. I mean, be a benefit to him. I think he's obviously one of the better quarterbacks that's ever played the game. I think his track record speaks for that. And man, with Kirk coming off the injury, that's the biggest concern. Steelers defense is no joke, like you just mentioned. They're a top 5, top 10 defense every single year, and they're going to continue to be that way. And starting off against Pittsburgh, a quarterback that has not played in the preseason, that's a slow start in itself. So I would lean Pittsburgh +3. I think that's an easy pick in my opinion. And I love the under in this game. I still think obviously Russell being with the Steelers, they have a lot of question marks on the offensive side still. How does he fit with George? Obviously Pickens is an incredible talent, but at the same time, he still has a lot of question marks as a player. So we'll see how it all gels. But I would say Steelers +3 and then under in that one.
Minnesota Vikings, New York Giants next up. Vikings 1.5-point road favorites. 41 the total here in this game. There's no freaking way I'm laying points on the road with the Vikings. No way. That's just not going to happen. Now, the question I'm asking myself, and I've still got, a couple days to make my final decision, is can I get there with the Giants? Can I trust the Giants here as a slight home underdog? Because to me, there's just not enough overall in the Minnesota Vikings that I trust with them as a road favorite. The offensive line, when Christian Darrisaw, Brian O'Neill, it's actually a solid tackle duo. When they're healthy, it can be a pretty solid offensive line. You go back and look just last year and 2 years ago, whenever Darrisaw has been injured for the Vikings, I mean, there's a huge, huge fall off in the offensive line play. So can Darrisaw and O'Neill, they're two above average tackles. Christian Darrisaw is one of the better left tackles. If those guys stay healthy, it can be a good offensive line. And Sam Darnold needs it. Yes, he can move a little bit, but a blazing speed demon at the quarterback spot, he's not. So, you're going to need those guys to be out there. The good news is they're healthy. Ty Chandler, we'll see what he can do at running back. I like what Aaron Jones, of course, comes over with Ty Chandler. It's a nice duo. And like I said, Aaron Jones leaving Green Bay, you thought it would be a loss for them. Getting Jacobs was big, but Aaron Jones now goes to the division rival here, Minnesota. They're fine at receiver, obviously. I mean, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, just outstanding as far as a duo. And that receiving core is healthy. That offensive line, I should say, is healthy coming into the year. It's going to come down to Sam Darnold, who, of course, now is the starter. He probably was going to be the starter anyway in week 1, but certainly with J.J. McCarthy sidelined for the season in training camp, Sam Darnold's going to be the guy moving forward. Defense is going to be the area to watch here for Minnesota, because pass rush to me is going to be something that wasn't great last year for the Minnesota Vikings. In fact, they had very little pass rush on opposing quarterbacks, and we know that's obviously where Daniel Jones has struggled, Danny Dimes in the past when he's been under pressure. But Minnesota's not one of those pass rush teams that'll put the fear of God in you, as an opposing quarterback. So I am a little bit concerned. We'll see Brian Flores, what he can do as the defensive coordinator with this group this year. For the New York Giants, look, everything went, it was a great 2 years ago what they did. They got to the playoffs, turnaround season in Brian Dable's first year. And then all of a sudden last year was the polar opposite. The offense struggled. They did have injuries, no question. Defense got picked apart. This year, it's going to be interesting what we see from the New York Giants. I think there's the O-line. Here's another offensive line that did have a lot of concerns last year. They just had a ton of injuries, guys not making that next jump. I like Andrew Thomas, but question marks outside of that, something to watch for. They finally do have a legit number 1 receiver, though. The receiving core didn't have that bona fide game breaker last year, but obviously drafting Malik Nabers from LSU should help that receiving core to go with Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton, Jalen Hyatt. So the O-line's critical for this Giants team. Now, Devin Singletary doesn't move the needle for me as a starting running back, but they showed Tyrone Tracy, Eric Gray, guys like that really had a solid preseason. So it wouldn't shock me if the Giants get them into the mix. What will you get from the Giants on the defensive side of the football? It's going to be interesting to see. I actually like what they're building here in the back seven. When you look at it, Xavier McKinney, brought in Bobby Okereke, I think continues to be a pretty solid player in the linebacker spot for this Giants team. Bobby Okereke was very good last year. And like I say, Dory Jackson, can he stay healthy? He's kind of had his play decline this season for the New York Giants, or in years past for the Giants. But big thing for the Giants is they're really starting to get things built along the D line as well. We love Dexter Lawrence in the middle of that defensive line. Great interior defensive lineman. Kayvon Thibodeau certainly has the potential to be a good pass rusher for the New York Giants. But they bring in Brian Burns from Carolina, and now you pair him with Thibodeau, and all of a sudden you've got a solid duo as your pass rush. So I just don't think there's enough in the overall Viking team right here to say I'm ready to lay points with this team on the road in week 1 with Sam Darnold as my quarterback. So I'm leaning Giants. I haven't bet it yet. I don't know if I will, but I'm definitely leaning Giants. And I'll probably, if this number stays here, they're a perfect teaser leg where you can put them in a 2-team 6-point teaser, tease them up to plus 7.5, get them above a touchdown. And I think I don't see Minnesota winning this game by more than a touchdown. I think they're a really good teaser option this week, the New York Giants. But even at plus 1.5, I do lean Giants here in this game. What do you think here in this one, Garrett, with Minnesota, New York Giants?
Yeah, I think I'm with you. A lot of question marks, obviously, at the quarterback position with the Giants. Getting Danny Dimes back in there. We'll see how it goes. I mean, it seems, I don't know. He's shown flashes in the past of being a pretty good NFL quarterback, not great. Obviously, getting him a weapon like Neighbors in there, he's obviously going to make a difference. But still, you got to protect. You got to get him the ball one way. So receiving, that's why Justin Jefferson, to me, it's hard to really put my mind around giving receivers that much money. I think games NFL is one up front, and until you have an O line and a quarterback that are intact, it's hard to really compete. So to me, both these teams are kind of middle to below average. Probably going to finish 3rd and 4th in their divisions this year. I love under. I love the under in this game. I think the Giants obviously have probably more question marks on offense than the Vikings. But it's like you just said, new quarterback with the Vikings. Sam's obviously shown flashes of being just an average NFL quarterback. You throw him in there with the Vikings offense with their receiving core. I still think they're very average. I think they're going to have a tough time scoring. Going on the road for week 1, I have a hard time believing the Giants won't win this game. So I'll say Giants money line.
Yeah, I'm with you. If I'm playing this side at the number it is right now, it's Giants for me in this game. The secondary is interesting. McKinney goes to Green Bay, and McKinney had a good year last year with the Giants. So that's a loss. Like I said, they got to hope Adoree Jackson stays healthy. And Newbin, this guy that they got to, steps up and fills the void here at the in that secondary for the Giants because, there's definitely some concerns back there. I like them at linebacker with Okereke. Their pass rush is much better now. You got Burns and Thibodeau combination. But again, that offensive line's and critical for any kind of success the Giants are going to have this year. I still lean to them, though, because I think there's a lot of questions on Minnesota and their road favorites, and I'm not sure they should be in that game. All right, Carolina, New Orleans. We've got the New Orleans Saints 4-point home favorites, 41.5 the total in this game. This is I don't want to say this is a leap of faith. Because, look, they were terrible last year, and there's not really a lot we saw in August from this team that makes you think, wow, they're going to be a lot better this year. But I'm going to believe in the coaching hire of Dave Canales. I'm going to buy into Bryce Young improvement in year 2 with the Carolina Panthers, that working with Canales, you'll see a leap in his play. That the O-line's still a question. Another team with fucking O-line questions. It never ends here in this league right now with O-line. And we'll get to the next team, which might be the biggest offensive line question in the NFL coming up in the next game. But here in Carolina, offensive line questions because, look, last year that unit was one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. So they do have to show improvement there. But I like the fact they brought in Canales. And I've said this before, Garrig, on the preview shows about Dave Canales. When he was with Seattle a few years ago, and he was on the offensive coaching staff, Geno had his best year out of the blue. Here's Geno Smith with the best year of his NFL career. He goes to Tampa Bay last year as the offensive coordinator and works directly with Baker Mayfield. What did we see? The best year of Baker Mayfield's career with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year. This guy has gotten the best season pretty much out of 2 guys that people thought were done. People thought Geno Smith never going to be any kind of big-time quarterback in the NFL. Now he's going on multi-year starter in Seattle. People thought, Baker Mayfield's washed. He's done. Bust. The whole bit for years. And Dave Canales pulls a very, very good season out of Baker Mayfield last year with Tampa Bay. Why can't he do that with Bryce Young? Why not? Bryce Young's still young. He can get better. He can learn. He still had a great college career. We're not ready to give up. I'm not ready to give up on Bryce Young just yet. The key, though, is he's going to need better run blocking, better pass protection. Do I love the running back room with Chuba Hubbard? And there's not a lot of depth there necessarily at running back because you got Chuba Hubbard and Miles Sanders. Can he stay healthy? That's a question. Receiving core, I like Deontay Johnson. I do like that they brought him in from Pittsburgh to go with Adam Thielen, the veteran. Jonathan Mingo, I think, showed you what he could be capable of as well. He could have, I think, a nice season if Bryce Young gets time to throw the ball. So I think the receiving core is solid. Not the best in the league, but better. Running back, Chuba Hubbard, we'll see. Of course, Chuba Hubbard's going to be helped if they run block better. And I think there's a potential they could here, Carolina. And working with Canales, be a little more creative with your offensive scheme as well can help. Defense for the Carolina Panthers this year. It's going to be interesting to see if they can, because look, the defense did keep them in a lot of games last year. For as horrendous as the offense, just all-time bad last year, the defense did a good job keeping them in the game. They were fourth in the NFL total yards per game, Carolina on defense. So you got to give them credit. They did do everything they could to keep their team in games, and that's key against New Orleans. Because to me, you talk about the Carolina questions. What about New Orleans? I think in the trenches, the O-line, they've got concerns. Ryan Ramczyk, again, is supposed to be a big part of the Saints offensive line, hurt again. They had a below average offensive line last year. Kamara, is he going to get time to run the fall? Is Derek Carr, check down Charlie, going to have an opportunity to throw the football and stretch the defense? I'm not so sure about that. We love Chris Olave, but I don't know about the receiving core for New Orleans outside of that. And then on the defensive side of the football, look, pass rush fell down last year for the New Orleans Saints. That would be a concern of mine. I think the secondary outside of Marshawn Lattimore, I think there's all kinds of concerns there for the New Orleans Saints as far as what they're going to get in their secondary. Can he bounce back? And like I said, Tyrann Mathieu in the safety spot. But again, Tyrann Mathieu older now. Has he still got good play, the best play in his career ahead of him? I'm not so sure about that. And more importantly, there's a quarterback and head coach combo, Gehrig, that I don't trust. You talk about Dennis Allen, 24-46 against the spread as a head coach in his NFL career. I've never been enamored with him as a coach here with the Saints or with the Raiders before that. And Derek Carr, as a favorite, of more than a field goal in his career, Derek Carr is 9-19 against the spread. That's just not very good. Give me Carolina plus the points. I'm on their win total over. I'm buying very low on this team. No one wants Carolina. I kind of do because this is a horseshit division. Horseshit, the NFC South. Start to fit, top to bottom. It's a division where a team like a Carolina can make significant improvement, and it can show up in the win-loss column. So I think Carolina's live here. Let's not forget what New Orleans did last year in their opener against Tennessee at home at the Superdome. Life and death to win the game, and the offense was terrible. And they barely escaped with the win against Tennessee in that first game at home last year. So I think Carolina's live to win the game outright, but getting more than a field goal, absolutely for me, taking Carolina. What do you think here?
I'm with you. I think, like you said, it can't get much worse for the Panthers. And being a Bama fan, being a Bryce Young fan, I think he's going to make a big improvement. Getting a head coach that wants him, that knows how to kind of get the most out of their players. I think that's going to benefit him a lot this year. I think there's going to be a confidence among him that you could see when he was at Bama, which was why he's the number one overall pick, why everybody wanted him. I think that's going to come back this year. I think he's showed a couple flashes in a couple games last year, just could never put it all together. And I think having a full off season to kind of get that NFL speed down, I think that's a thing that a lot of rookie quarterbacks struggle with, is the speed of NFL. So I think year 2 for him is he's going to take a big leap. He had a lot of experience playing the full season last year. Obviously, a lot of negative experience, but at the same time, you can't put a big I'd say is an attribute that you just can't put a measurement on, is that experience factor. So I'm excited to see how he does this second year. And like you said, with the Saints, I mean, Derek Carr, what is he now? Is he doesn't throw the ball downfield. He's going to check the ball down. He's going to be safe with the ball, but at the same time, he's not going to make plays. So to me, quarterback, I'm taking Bryce Young. So I feel comfortable with the Panthers. I'd say I kind of like the under in this game too. I'm not a big under guy, but the 2 last games, man, I think the under is going to hit.
Well, unders in week one usually are a popular bet, and usually, not always, but usually you'll see more unders than overs in week one of the NFL season, especially these days when a lot of the quarterbacks, the star quarterbacks, and the veteran quarterbacks don't play a lot in the preseason, if at all. And it takes
Mhm.
some time for that offense to get things rolling. We've got Garrick only for a few more minutes. So, what we're going to do is we're going to just get his thoughts on the remainder of these games rapid fire. So here we go. New England, Cincinnati, rapid fire time. Cincinnati 7.5-point favorites, 40.5 the total. For me, it's an easy slam dunk under. The New England offensive line, this is the one that to me is the worst in the NFL offensive line. It's awful. And if you saw it in the preseason, there was a fucking guy in the backfield moment the ball was snapped in one of those preseason games. This O line is in shambles for New England. They have no game breakers. They have no playmakers. They have no speed at receiver to stretch the defense at all. And it's a problem for Jacoby Brissett, the journeyman quarterback. But Cincinnati, look, their O line last year was kind of up and down. Burrow, is he going to, hit it running right away? I don't know. Under to me is the clear choice. What do you think there, Patriots, Bengals?
Yeah, I think under is a safe bet. I do love Cincinnati in this game. I think Patriots with the whole new coaching staff. Obviously, Bill B gone. I think they're going to go through some culture changes, and that's going to take a few seasons to kind of get to where they want to be. And I think it's a tough matchup. Obviously, Cincinnati is one of the better teams in the AFC, and I think Joe B being out there, it sounds like that Jamar deal is going to get done in the next couple of days. So I think he's going to be out there, and I think they're going to be a tough team to stop on the offensive side. So I like Cincinnati in this game. I think they do cover 7.5.
I think they win. I am a little concerned about these slow starts the Bengals have had, but I like them in a teaser. Like Bengals and Giants teaser, I think is definitely going to be one of my two team teasers. Bengals down to -1.5, Giants up to +7.5. Tennessee, Chicago, Will Levis, Caleb Williams, second year quarterback versus a first overall rookie making his first start. By the way, a first overall quarterback, Garrick, has not won in week one of the NFL season in his rookie year since David Carr, not Derek, David Carr in Houston in 2002. So it was a long time ago. What do you think here, my friend? Titans Bears.
A lot of hype with the Bears this year. I'm buying into the hype. I think Caleb Williams has all the intangibles you want in a quarterback. I think he does a lot of great things, and I think they did a great job of surrounding him with playmakers. So I do like Chicago in this game. I think they're going to be tough to beat. A lot of to me, there's still more question marks on the Titans offense. I think Will Levis is decent. I think they added Calvin this past year, but I don't necessarily know how that's going to help them. I do think they're kind of losing Derrick Henry, and I think their identity is going to be a little bit off week one. And I do think the Bears feel comfortable with Caleb leading the charge, and I think you saw a lot of flashes in the preseason of him looking like Pat a little bit. So I'm excited to see him in live action, and I think I think they cover -4. I feel comfortable there.
The Bears look like they could potentially be good. Titans were a good underdog under Vrabel. We'll see if that can be the case now with the new head coach there. Hey, Callahan Auto Parts,
Hmm.
Arizona and Buffalo. Bills 6.5-point home favorites, 48 the total. I like over here. And look, I think Buffalo is actually going to be an under team after this game.
Hmm.
Like because they want to run the football more with James Cook, take pressure off this offensive line, which has a lot of new pieces. Not always try to throw the ball and put it all on Josh Allen, especially with that receiving core's big questions. Gone is Cook, gone is Gabe Davis, gone is Stephon Diggs. Is Keon Coleman going to be? Are they going to hit on Keon Coleman with that draft pick? They're going to need to because there's a lot of questions at receiver. But the defense is a concern for me for Buffalo. That safety spot's very concerning. The cornerback, there's new changes there. And Arizona, to me, with Murray back, they're going to be capable on offense. Marvin Harrison Jr., of course, a receiver. But that defense, it was a bottom tier defense last year. I'm not sure Arizona's defense is going to be much better this year. So for me, rather than a side, I'm not ready to lay close to a touchdown with Buffalo, even though I think they win. I think the over's the look here. I think after this game, Buffalo could be an under team because they're going to be run the ball, churn the clock. But in this game, there could be some big plays both ways, and I like over the total. What do you think?
I'm with you there. I think Kyler obviously being back is going to benefit those guys tremendously. I think that quarterback room, man. I think when you look at the NFL, you have a quarterback that's not going to get the job done. It's going to be a long season, so I'm excited to see him back out there healthy, flying around with Marvin Harrison, see what he can do at the pro level. Bills, to me, I think they have outside of the Patriots probably the worst receiving core in football. So I don't necessarily know why they didn't attack that position in the offseason. So I'm excited to. I wouldn't say excited. I'm interested to see how that treats them. Why they did not go that route this offseason. So we'll see how it kind of goes. I think they're going to rely too much on Josh Allen this year to make plays every single time, and it's hard to be a one man football team. So I would lean. I think Cardinals plus 6.5 makes sense to me.
All right, Houston, Indy. Houston 2.5-point road favorites, 48.5 the total. What do you think?
I think you got to go Houston. I think you see what they did in the offseason. They had a good offseason. I think obviously what they did at the end of the season, making a little bit of a run, going into Indy and winning that game, they're gonna have a lot of confidence. I think C.J. Stroud is one of those guys where you can point to potentially being maybe a tier below Pat with the whole quarterback system. Yeah, I think C.J. Stroud's gonna have too much confidence week one. I think they're a well coached football team. They're gonna be excited. They're gonna be flying around, and I think you kind of question what Anthony Richardson's gonna do at the quarterback position.
I'm higher on Indy than people think because I thought they had a lot of injuries. I still think Richardson could be solid, but I have a hard time betting against Houston. I might use the Colts, though, in a teaser up to 8.5. They might be a good teaser. I don't know if Houston will blow them out. I think it still could be competitive. Raiders, Chargers. Chargers 3-point favorites, 40.5 the total. What do you think here in this one?
Oh man, the AFC West. I have a hard time believing that the Chargers won't be a decent team this year. I think with Harbaugh being there, he's been successful everywhere he's been. I think you'll see his next step with Justin Herbert. I think they're going to be a much more balanced football team, which is tough to play in the NFL. As I mentioned earlier, when you have balance, you keep those guys guessing. So I feel comfortable. Chargers -3.
I lean Chargers too. I'm high on the chart. I'm not loving that Herbert was injured all the training camp and preseason, but I still think then defense still is a question. The Raiders are going to have an awesome defense, but man, O'Connell and Minshew, the mustache man at the quarterback spot, not totally sold. Washington, Tampa Bay 3.5-point home favorites, 43.5 the total. I kind of like Washington a little bit here. I like them more in a teaser than the plus 3.5, but I liked what I saw to Jaden Daniels. And I know it's a rookie quarterback going on the road for his first start, but I could see this being a game where Washington's right in it here against Tampa. What do you think with the Commanders and Bucks?
I'm going to go with the better quarterback. I'm going to go Baker. I think experience is going to be the biggest factor in this game. I think, like you just mentioned, I don't know how Daniels is going to do first road game as a rookie. He showed flashes in the preseason, but I think you take Baker. I think he's going to be confident playing now that he got a little bit of a money contract this offseason, a team that wanted him. It's going to be only beneficial for him to be there. So I'm excited to see how he's going to really translate into taking that next step from being just a decent team to kind of that division leader. I think that division, like you said, is the weakest in football. So we'll see how this one plays out.
Not the same Tampa defense. Washington's learning a new defense, and the Heat in Tampa, like we talked about with the Miami game, I agree with the move up in the total. I think it could go over that 43.5 as well. Denver, Seattle 6-point home favorites, 42. The debut of Bo Nix. Tough assignment, though. First start on the road, and you know how loud with the 12th man it can be in Seattle. I mean, I love the Mike McDonald hire, and I like Seattle a lot, but do I want to lay 6 with Seattle? And great defensive coordinator, McDonald, but they got to learn a new defense. I actually like a contrarian over. A lot of people like the under in this game. I'm going to go a contrarian over in this game with Denver and Seattle. I think Knicks in the offense can move the ball against the defense a bit. And Seattle's offense, I think, with Smith. And Denver's defense has question marks, too. I think Geno in the offense for Seattle can move it a little bit. Watch for Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think he's going to have a great year for Seattle out of Ohio State. What do you think here with this one, Garrick? Broncos, Seahawks.
I think it's going to be tough for the Broncos to get anything going. I think Seahawks handle business at home as they always do. -6.
All right. There we go. Dallas, Cleveland. Cleveland, 2.5-point home favorites, 41 the total. I don't know what's the better storyline here. These two teams playing each other, or Tom Brady in his broadcasting debut here for Fox, which he'll be in the booth for this game. I want to bet against both of these teams, man. I don't like much of what I'm seeing. I don't trust Deshaun Watson. I don't. I saw him in the playoff game against Houston shit the bed. He was awful. Totally outplayed by C.J. Stroud. But Dallas has issues galore. They really do. I mean, they had CeeDee Lamb out for all of camp. The O-line is not even close to what it once was. How are they going to stop the run? They weren't great stopping the run. They've got old man Elliott in the backfield, Zeke Elliott. I mean, they got problems galore. I'm not high on either. I want to fade both of these teams, but pick your poison. I think I'd rather fade Dallas just a little bit more than Cleveland. So I'm going to lean Browns here. What do you think?
Yeah, I think like you said, there's a lot of question marks with both these teams. Obviously, they have a lot of the key pieces that you need to win championships. I trust the Browns defense more than the Cowboys defense. So I'll go Cleveland at home -2, and I'll go. I think over 40 hits. I think Deshaun Watson's going to have not a breakout game, but just a decent game, and I think that they can put up enough points. I think they'll get over 40.
You want to know one of the more bizarre things last year of that whole NFL season was that the defense in Cleveland for the Browns was unbelievable. It was phenomenal. And then
Yeah,
they went on the road and they couldn't stop anybody.
yeah.
I mean, it was crazy. The home road split and dichotomy in the defensive performance last year of the Cleveland Browns. We'll see if they can iron that out. But they are at home there. So maybe that defense does play like they did at home where it was really good. All right, Sunday Night Football. And it's another playoff rematch. Rams and Lions. Detroit 3.5-point home favorites, 51 the total. We're tight for time, so we'll go right to you. What do you think here?
Oh man, I think Detroit has a lot of momentum from last year. I think they're playing confident. I think they finally found their brand of football that they feel comfortable with. So I think Detroit -3.5. I'll roll with Detroit. I think Detroit at home with well, I can't think of it. Aaron Donald gone this year. I think they're obviously gonna see what type of impact that type of player has on a game. So I like the Lions here.
I won't bet against the Lions because they're my pick to win the NFC this year. That's how much I think of them. And they're obviously, every time that offense plays indoors, Jared Goff and company, they seem to light it up. But McVay, man, I know his long-term track record in week one especially is very good with all offseason to prepare. And look what they did last year in week one. Didn't they go to Seattle and they pounded the piss out of the Seahawks last year?
Yep.
Very, very impressive. But that's a great game, though, on Sunday night. All right, Jets and 49ers. Monday Night Football, the return of Aaron Rodgers. San Francisco 4-point home favorites, 51. I'll be honest, I'm interested in the Jets, and I understand why they've taken money. Is Ayuk going to be in there after just getting the deal done? Same with Trent Williams, the left tackle. And we saw all last year, anytime Trent Williams was injured and not playing, what a worse offensive line as a totality the 49ers had. Questions. Didn't love what I saw from them in training camp either, preseason-wise from the starters. Jets, meanwhile, you look at their situation. Obviously, they're loaded. On defense, they could be as good as it gets. The offensive line should be a lot better, too, because they get Elijah Vera Tucker. He was out a lot of last year. They get him back. They made 2 upgrades along the offensive line, including Tyron Smith from Dallas, which is a significant upgrade to that Jets offensive line. So, and of course, they've got Garrett Wilson, a great receiver leading that receiving core. They've got, obviously, Breece Hall at running back. They're just loaded. At both sides of the ball, and especially that defense, which, look, that defense carried them to, they had 7 wins last year with freaking Tim Boyle and Zach Wilson as their quarterback. So, look, I'm reluctant because it's usually the Jets or the Jets. They'll find a way to fuck it up. They'll find a way to screw it up. But I think getting more than a field goal with them here in week one, I'm interested on Monday night. What do you think here?
I was on the Jets bandwagon a lot last year, so I'll go with the Jets. I think their defense is obviously what it is. It's top 5 in the league. I think there's a lot of questions with the Niners' offense and health. I think obviously their first round pick just had a crazy accident. He's not going to play. I think I thought I saw something the other day with McCaffrey being a little bit banged up, and then obviously you got the guys that didn't participate in training camp. So slow starters against a great defense. It's going to be tough for them. And Aaron Rodgers seems like everything's going well for him. I think he feels comfortable second year with those guys, and I think we're going to see a huge leap with Garrett Wilson this year, taking that next step of being a top 3 receiver in the NFL. So I would take the Jets and the points.
Like all these new guys on the offensive line too, and that's the critical component. Because Rodgers just has to be good, doesn't have to be great like he was in Green Bay. The defense is there. The receivers are there. The running backs are there. You got everything you need. Does the O-line hold up for the New York Jets? That's going to be critical to them being an AFC and Super Bowl contender. Great stuff with our guest, Garrick Dieter. Great job. We appreciate you joining us here for week one, previewing the season. We'll have him back on him certainly at least a few more times during the season, but we can't let you leave without getting a best bet. So show requirement. Best bet for week one for Garrick Dieter, what would it be?
I'm gonna take the hometown team. I think the Chiefs -3. I think that's a safe bet for anybody out there. I think they're gonna come out. Uh, I think they're gonna go. I think they're going to win by 10. So I think -3 is a lock.
There you go. Kansas City -3 Thursday night, the season opener against the Baltimore Ravens. Best bet for Garrick Dieter. Man, this has been a blast talking football. We'll get you back on throughout the course of the season, and we'll talk again soon. Enjoy
Love
week
it.
one and cash
Yes,
some
sir.
tickets. Let's go.
We got to do it. We got to make a lot of money this weekend. Appreciate you for having me on. I'm looking forward to continuing this and having a lot of fun this season.
No doubt. We'll see you again soon, my friend. Take care.
Yes, sir. See ya.
All right, there he is, Garrick Dieter, with us here on this edition of the show. All right, I'm just going to go back around and just go a little more into my thoughts on the remaining games. New England, Cincinnati. Like I said, I think Cincinnati will win this game. I'm not totally comfortable laying 7.5 because I think New England's defense is going to be potentially quite good this year. Look what they did last year. With Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi and just miserable offensive play, bad O-line, not many great weapons at receiver. And that defense held them in so many games last year. And I think they've got a pretty good defense on paper this year. When you look at that Patriot defensive roster, and again, this is a New England team with Burrow's coming back. Their O-line last year kind of disappointed a little bit for the Bengals. I'm not sure the Bengals are going up and down the field scoring at will in this game against the Patriots defense. So when I look at the Patriots coming into this season, I think there's reasons to think that on defense, they are going to be a team that's capable with Christian Gonzalez, obviously now taking over at cornerback. Jonathan Jones, Marcus Jones, Jabril Peppers at a renaissance season. Jelani Tavai at linebacker is very good. You look at Josh Uche on the edge rush spot, Keon White, Devin Godcho, Dietrich Wise. I mean, D-line's solid. I mean, it's a team that I think the defense is going to be pretty good, but the offense is miserable. There's no doubt. So to me, under's the best play, and I think Bengals win, but I think I'm more comfortable and confident with Cincinnati in a teaser down to -1.5 than asking them to win by more than a touchdown. Tennessee, Chicago. I kind of want to take the Titans here, +4. I can't believe I'm saying I'm becoming more a fan of Will Levis, but I will say I think it's a situation where he did play better down the stretch. We have to see it still from Caleb Williams. I don't know if I move on Tennessee because I really do like what the Bears are putting together here, especially on offense. The offensive line struggled last season, but this year, definitely I think you're going to see some improvement from that O-line coming into the year. Jones, Jenkins, Shelton, Nate Davis, Darnell Wright. I mean, overall, it's upgraded from last year. There's no question. DJ Moore, bona fide number one receiver. Keenan Allen was a nice get from the Chargers. Now, again, he's got to stay healthy, and he's an older receiver now, and health's been an issue. But still, if he's on the field, he's a great receiver. And then Roma Dunze, the rookie out of Washington. So they've got weapons. Is Caleb Williams ready? The D-line, you look at it, certainly last year it was upgraded once they got Montez Sweat. There's no question. And I think when you look at it, certainly it's definitely a much improved defensive line last year as well for this or this year it will be for them as well. So that being said, I look at this team. I think the new offensive coordinator, because I know the Bears fans weren't happy with Luke Getsy last year. They weren't always thrilled with the way the offense was, the game plan and the scheme. So you're definitely going to have a new offensive coordinator to change things up. And apparently they want to be a little bit more aggressive here with Shane Waldron as the new offensive coordinator for the Chicago Bears this year. Of course, comes over from Seattle for the last few years. I think this game I would lean over the total, believe it or not, because if you look at Tennessee's defense, Tennessee on the defensive side of the football last year, it was far from their best defensive team. And in fact, there were a lot of holes with the Titans on defense. And I know Brian Callahan's going to try to iron those issues out. And we'll see if they can. But I think Will Levis and that offense can do enough on offense this year. And remember Calvin Ridley there, Tyler Boyd, Treylon Burks, DeAndre Hopkins. There's weapons here for Tennessee to work with. So I would lean over this total here with Tennessee and Chicago. Like I said, I think at +4, I lean Tennessee as well, but I'm more likely to bet over than Tennessee because I respect the Bears and what they're putting together enough. to maybe lay off betting against them. But I know long term, when laying more than a field goal with Chicago has not been a good proposition. But this is a kind of a different, we expect to be better Chicago team. We'll see if we see it in week 1. Arizona, Buffalo, like I said, I like the over. I think Buffalo after this game could play some unders because they're going to run the football more. They're going to try to turn the clock more. And the receiving core is a question. But I'm just very low on Arizona's defense. I'm not sure it's going to be all that great this year. I think they're going to give up points on a weekly basis. And then you look at the Bills defense now having to face a healthy Kyler Murray. Safety position questions, D-line questions, secondary questions. Matt Milano, your best linebacker, who you thought you were going to get back this year from injury, is out, injures himself again in training camp and is out again indefinitely. So I think this game does go over. After this game, we may look at the Bills as maybe a team that can go under in some of their games. But I think this game still, I would prefer over the total. Houston, Indy, this is another one I would prefer over the total with, even though I know Houston's defense made huge strides last year, but there's no doubt offensively they're going to be able to light it up. In theory, they should be able to light it up. Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Robert Woods, John Mechie, too, back in the fold, which is significant. They like John Mechie quite a bit, but he's had some health setbacks. Don't forget what a good receiver he was at Alabama years ago. Dalton Schultz, a great tight end. Weapons galore. They should be able to move the ball. Indy's defense did not look good last year at times, and it did not look good in preseason either. So over the total for me, weather won't be an issue, obviously, indoors in Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis. So over for me. I'm a little Houston probably wins the game, but I'm higher on Indy than people think. I think Anthony Richardson could surprise some people. I think the offense could be a little bit better. I am worried about the defense, so I like the over. I actually lean Colts in a teaser. I don't want the Colts at 2.5, but I think I'll put them in a few teasers up to 8.5 in that game. Raiders, Chargers, for me, it's Chargers or nothing, but I am worried about the way the training camp unfolded for the Chargers. And again, we're going to have to wait and see how effective, considering he had his training camp interrupted due to that, unfortunately, that foot injury. Justin Herbert, Jim Harbaugh was saying he would look very good on Monday. So I think we're going to see him start. I think he's going to be ready to go. And right away, he's a better quarterback than either Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell. For the Raiders, of course, we're going to end up seeing Gardner Minshew is the starting quarterback here for the Raiders. Like I say, at -3 or better, I lean Chargers. I don't love it because I've also got Chargers win total over this season, and I feel like and it's a pretty significant position because I trust Harbaugh. He's had good track record in the NFL before. He's had good first seasons as well. You don't need to add on taking the Chargers -3 individually this week. Chargers are going to be a team I'm going to be looking at back in the underdog role more so than laying points. I do think they still win this game, but I'm not rushing to lay 3, especially when I've already got Chargers win total. That's enough liability and enough, tied up in the LA Chargers at this point in time for me. All right, Washington and Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay 3.5-point home favorites, 43.5 the total. Commanders in a teaser, although at +3.5, I still do lean Washington. I mean, maybe I'm drinking the Jaden Daniels Kool-Aid prematurely, but I mean, he looked really confident, poised in the preseason. Now, again, you got to face a starting defense now, game planning for you. That's a totally different animal here in the regular season now that you're the starter and you're on the road. But Tampa Bay's never had a strong home field advantage compared to other teams in the NFL. And look, Baker Mayfield in that offense had a solid year last year, but without Dave Canales, there's a new OC. How's that going to transpire? And the Tampa defense last year, look, they've had better defensive teams than what we saw in 2013. That's for sure. And it's going to be interesting to see if they can kind of get back to the defensive level we saw from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. When they were winning the Super Bowl with Brady a few years ago. The good news is, Jamel Dean's healthy. I definitely like Antoine Winfield in the safety spot. No doubt about it. He's a great player. Levante David's healthy again. Other than Vita Vea in the middle of that defensive line, I am worried about the pass rush a little bit, from the likes of Diaby and Tryon Shoyinka and Nelson. Are you going to get a pass rush consistently from those guys? And keep in mind, Jaden Daniels has mobility. So the heat of Tampa, I could see the defenses wearing down as the game goes on, much like we talked about in the game with Jacksonville at Miami. So I like the over as well in this game, 43.5. But for me, Washington +3.5, even more so, I like Washington in a teaser getting them above 7. All right, Denver, Seattle. Like I said, contrarian over for me. I think Geno Smith and the Seahawks offense against, look, I still got questions about the Broncos on defense. I do. When you look at the Denver Broncos coming into this season, last year their O-line was pretty good. Last year their defense was a big issue. I like that they got Patrick Surtain II re-signed, but I'm telling you what, the defense just had their issues last year. They did play a little bit better second half of the year, but let's see if that can translate into this season for the Broncos. I look at their secondary as very mediocre at best. Their linebacking core is okay. It's not great. Who's going to get a consistent pass rush on this team between, the likes of Baron Browning and Jonathan Cooper? And, there's questions there on that defense that I think Geno and Seattle can take advantage of. And the thing is with Geno is, he's, I think, ready to have a solid year this year, without a doubt. Connor Williams as center now for this team. I think that's significant for them, getting him from the Miami Dolphins, one of the better centers in the NFL to help anchor that O-line with Charles Cross on the left side, George Fant on the right side at the tackle spots. Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet is a good running back tandem. They're fine at receiver with the two veterans, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, plus Jackson Smith and Jigba, who I think could have a big second year in the NFL with Seattle. So contrarian over here. And then on the flip side, the defense for Seattle made strides last year. Mike Macdonald's a great coaching hire and had an incredible tenure as DC at Baltimore, but there could be a little bit of a learning curve for that defense. There'll be a great defense, I think, in a few weeks, a few months later in the season, but will it happen right away will be the bigger question for the Seahawks. And I was impressed with the offense under Bo Nix in the preseason. I know this is on the road. It's a much taller order, game planning for you. But I think he can do enough on offense to move the Broncos, and he developed immediate chemistry too in the preseason. Nix with Tim Patrick and some of the receivers. I think either he's going to count upon here for them a little bit. See if Marvin Mims, Josh Reynolds, Cortland Sutton also can be those big targets here for Bo Nix. Javonte Williams, pretty good running back. Jaleel McLaughlin as well, spelling him off. But like I said, I think with this total being as low as it is, 42, I think there's reason to believe we could get more points than this low number assumes. Dallas, Cleveland, like I said, I would rather bet against these two teams. I think there's more issues with Dallas. Really on both sides of the ball, I got question marks galore. I don't like the receiving core outside of CeeDee Lamb, and maybe if Brandon Cooks still has something in the tank, he could be solid. But after that, not a lot of proven commodities at receiver. I hate the running back tandem that they've got coming into the season. Not impressed with Zeke Elliott and Rico Dowdle being my running backs coming into the year. The O-line is way down. The defense, you look at it. Obviously, look, Micah Parsons is awesome. We like Lawrence as well, but I think when you look at it, there's still some questions there on that side of the football. The secondary with Trayvon Diggs, kind of a risk taker at the cornerback spot. He goes for the interception. Sometimes he can get burned. And don't forget, Deron Bland is injured to begin the year. And Deron Bland was a star in the secondary last year for Dallas, no pun intended. He was outstanding. He had the multiple interception game. It was crazy during the season last year. It was wasn't it the Thanksgiving game? Deron Bland had that just incredible game last year with the multiple pick sixes in the same game. It was absolutely incredible. And the single season pick six record he is what he got in that game. That's what it was. He got the single season pick six record, Deron Bland, in that Thanksgiving game against Washington last year. Yeah, you don't have him to start the year. So there's a lot of questions on the defense too. And the one thing about Cleveland is I do think the defense is pretty good. Now, they did show home road dichotomy in their performance. Last year on the road, the defense was terrible for some reason. I can't really explain it. But at home, they played really well on defense. The good news is they're at home here in this one. Looks like that there's a potential that they're without Denzel Ward to begin the season. We'll have to wait and see. That would be a blow to the secondary. But you still have Newsome and you have Delpit. You have Owusu Koromoa, Ogbo Okoronkwo, Zadarius Smith, Myles Garrett, and the edge rush. They should be fine getting a pass rush. and that's a concern with this Dallas offensive line, probably the weakest it's been in a few years. So I side with Cleveland. Do I love it? No, I would rather fade both of these teams in week one. I'm so disappointed they're playing each other because I'd rather see them play someone else and fade them. But lesser of two evils here for me is the Cleveland Browns in this one. All right, Rams-Lions on Sunday Night Football. Look, I'm not going against Detroit at home, but McVay is a really good week one coach. It's a revenge spot. The Rams are going to be, I think, ready to go, come into play. I still don't know, though, if they're better than Detroit. And Detroit at home with Jared Goff, we know that offense can light it up at home, especially with indoor conditions. They were a great indoor dome team last year and really the year before that as well. The O-line is legit. It's elite in the NFL with, it's right there as one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. And that's going to be critical to watch for the Rams because one of your critical components on the D-line, Aaron Donald, is no longer in the NFL. He retired. So how do the Rams compensate for that? Are they going to be able to make inroads on this just elite offensive line that the Detroit Lions have? Well, you did bring in Jared Verse out of Florida State, drafted him. We'll see if he can make an impact on the pass rush against this great Lions offensive line. Stafford showed he's still got a lot in the tank, but I like that they've got, Kyron Williams, Blake Corum at running back. Kupp and Nakua could be one of your better 1-2 punches at receiver this year. And Demarcus Robinson came on last year for them as well. Tyler Higbee at tight end. So there's weapons here for the Rams. And that defense for the Lions, up front, they're good. Linebackers are good. Secondary was an issue last year. But the good news is you did address it, but there's still a lot of younger, more inexperienced players the Lions are relying on, at linebacker. But Carlton Davis, getting a veteran like him should help that secondary a lot for Detroit. That was a nice get in the offseason. But other than that, there's still a lot of youth there. I honestly would lean over here in this game, 51, but I don't know if it's a bargain at this number. Like we are talking about, I think as of right now, this is still one of the highest totals of week one in the NFL. Actually, I think it is the highest total. Yes, 50 and a half, 51. There is no higher total in week one than this game with the Rams and Lions on Sunday night. So I lean over, but I just don't know if I'm getting the greatest value here to bet it. And then Monday Night Football, Gehrig talked about it. I'm kind of on board. Jets are nothing for me in this game. And look, I'm very hesitant to jump on this Jets train, but the fact is, Aaron Rodgers doesn't have to do everything. He can come back. He can be solid. Just don't turn the ball over. Don't put it in harm's way. Don't make mistakes. Rely on your run game with Breece Hall. Rely on an O-line that should be better. You bring Tyron Smith in from Dallas. Elijah Vera Tucker, who was a huge injury loss last year on that O-line, is healthy again. It's an upgraded O-line. You brought in a lot of good pieces. And, of course, your defense should be elite because in all three levels, this defense is formidable for the New York Jets when you look at what they've got on that side of the football. I mean, it really is. It's impressive to see what the New York Jets have with them on defense. Quinnen Williams and Javon Kinlaw in the middle of that D-line. Jermaine Johnson, your top pass rusher. At linebacker, C.J. Mosley, Quincy Williams. What a duo. Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed. Michael Carter just got signed finally by the Jets. And so there's a chance he plays in this game as well. So you're loaded in the secondary. So there's just all kinds of they're absolutely loaded talent-wise, depth-wise on defense. The O-line's better. You've got the run game with Breece Hall, not to mention Braylon Allen, who I think could make an impact at running back for the Jets as well. Aaron Rodgers doesn't have to be Superman. He doesn't have to carry the team like he did so many times years ago with Green Bay. Just come in, don't turn the ball over, make the throws when they're there, rely on your run game and your defense, and this could be a very good season for the New York Jets. And then the San Francisco questions. Are we going to see Brandon Ayuk? Trent Williams just got signed. Is he going to be ready for this Monday nighter and playing for the 49ers? So there's questions there. Super Bowl hangover. Long term, the numbers aren't good in week one of the following season for the team that lost in the Super Bowl ATS. So, yeah, for me, it would be only the Jets +4. Nothing for me in that game. I don't think that total's correct. No, the total's only 44 in that game. That's a misprint. That the total is 51 in that game. There we go, 44. I actually lean under in this game with the Jets and the 49ers, but probably not going to bet it. The Jets, though, I am interested. at +4 for Monday Night Football. All right, we heard Garrett Dieter's best bet earlier in the show. He went homer, Kansas City -3. I do agree with that, but it is not my best bet. I'm going to go with something else for best bet, and I'm going to go Carolina Panthers +4. Actually, +4.5 is out there at a couple books still. So we'll go +4.5 with the Carolina Panthers as my NFL Week 1 best bet. I believe in this team improving this year. Dave Canales a good hire. He works well with quarterbacks. Look what he did with Geno in Seattle. Look what he did with Baker in Tampa last year. I think he will work with Bryce Young to become a better quarterback this season. And to me, there's just as many questions, almost as many questions, maybe not just as many, but almost as many questions about New Orleans. They are concerning to me in the trenches, both sides of the ball, O-line, D-line. Their secondary outside of Lattimore has some holes in it. Are they going to hold up? And then, of course, you talk about a quarterback and a coach tandem that are just a tandem I don't have a boatload of confidence in. Dennis Allen, 24-46 against the straight up in his coaching career for the New Orleans Saints. And then, of course, Derek Carr, 9-19 against the spread in his career when his teams have been favored by more than a field goal. Not the kind of track record that says lay the points. The Saints were life and death to scratch their way past Tennessee in Week 1 last season in their home opener. And I think they were laying points in that game, and they didn't cover the number. They did win that game, but like I said, it was by the skin of their teeth, 16-15. And that's what I see here. New Orleans, they're in tough to win this game at all, let alone win it by a margin of more than a field goal. So Carolina +4, that is +4.5, I should say. That is going to be my best bet here on Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy for NFL Week 1. That's a wrap. Again, we'll be here every week throughout the NFL season with various guests. Hit the like button on the way out. Appreciate it very much. I'm Ian Cameron. Enjoy NFL Week 1. Enjoy the games and good luck. And we will talk to you again next week, once again, for the NFL edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy.